feet over western Montana, with a wall of gray pressing in from the north and his daughter Claire sitting perfectly still in the right seat, watching the instrument panel the way someone watches it when they're actually reading it, not panicking, not fearful. He adjusted the throttle. He told himself the weather was manageable. In the back seat, Diane had stopped talking 20 minutes ago. Diane always talked when things were fine. Have you ever kept something so close to your chest for so long that when you finally said it out loud, you weren't even sure you'd meant to? Welcome to Strong Mind Stories, character-driven stories with a twist you won't see coming and an emotional truth you probably will. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more. Let's get into it. The funeral had been small. Walt's mother had lived in Havre, Montana for 61 years, and in the end she was buried next to Walt's father in the cemetery on the west edge of town, with 11 people standing at the graveside in the October wind. Walt and Diane had flown his Cessna up from Spokane the day before. Claire had flown commercial into Billings and driven up alone. Arriving just before the service started, Walt watched her come through the door of the church hall and thought, she still walks like she's solving something. Head down, moving fast, already 3 steps ahead of whatever room she's walking into. She had always been like that, even as a little girl. After the graveside service, the family gathered in the church hall for an hour, and Claire stood at the edge of it with coffee she didn't drink, checking her phone at intervals she was trying to make look casual. When Walt got close enough, she said she had to get back. Important meeting, she said, tomorrow morning, early. She said it the way she said most things to him now, factual, complete, no invitation to follow up. Walt nodded. He didn't ask what kind of meeting. He was standing near the door when he saw her face change. She'd been reading something on her phone, and now she was very still in the way people go still when something has gone wrong. She called the airline, turned slightly away from the room, and when she came back her voice was flat and controlled. Flights canceled, she said. Mechanical. Nothing else going west until tomorrow afternoon. The airport in Havre had 1 runway, a windsock that had been fading since roughly 1987, and a single commercial departure per day going west. Claire was already searching for rental cars on her phone, already solving the problem alone the way she solved every problem. Walt looked at his daughter standing in the church hall of his mother's funeral, making arrangements that didn't include anyone else. Come back with us, he said. I'm flying out this afternoon. I can have you in Spokane by 5:30. You catch the evening connection to Sacramento. The offer sat between them. Diane looked at her coffee cup. Claire looked at her phone. She looked at the sky through the window, clear and October blue. What time do we leave, she said. 2 o'clock. On the ground by 2:15 at the latest. She did her own math. Something settled in her face. Not warmth, not relief, just the recognition that the numbers worked. Okay, she said. Walt told himself it meant something. They left Havre at 2:10 in the afternoon under clean skies. Walt had pulled a weather report that morning showing a storm system moving through overnight, well after they'd be home in Spokane. He was certified only to fly in clear conditions, which meant he needed the sky to cooperate, and the sky, as far as he could tell, intended to cooperate. The plains east of the Rockies were smooth and golden in the afternoon light. The Cessna climbed steadily through 8, 9, 10,000 feet. The engine turning over with a steady mechanical patience Walt found more reliable than most human company. Diane sat in the back with a paperback she kept opening and closing without reading. Claire sat in the right seat and watched the ground move below. She had put on the co-pilot headset without being asked. Walt noticed she'd adjusted the small microphone to exactly where it should be, not shoved to the corner of her mouth the way people did when they didn't know what they were doing, but centered, an inch out, the correct position. You still flying? He asked. She turned and looked at him. Some, she said. He nodded and left it there. He had learned, in the years since everything fell apart between them, that pressing Claire produced nothing useful. They crossed the Continental Divide at 11,000 feet. The mountains below were brown and gray, first snow on the high peaks, the valleys running north-south in long afternoon shadow. Walt always thought of his wife on mountain crossings. She'd flown with him twice and both times gone quiet the way she went quiet in church, like altitude required something of you. I put yellow flowers on her grave, Claire said. I saw. She liked yellow. She did. They didn't say anything after that. The mountains moved underneath them. Then the sky to the north changed. It came the way mountain weather comes, a darkening that 10 minutes ago had been blue, now gray, moving fast and low. Walt saw it and checked his chart, checked the GPS, did the math. The storm was 12 hours ahead of schedule. It happened. He had options. Little weather up north, he said. We'll go around the south side, follow the valley west, drop into Missoula if we need to. How long does that add? Diane leaned between the seats. An hour, maybe a bit more. My flight, Claire began. You'll make it, Walt said. I'll get you there. She turned back to the window. He couldn't see her face from where he sat. He turned south and began descending, looking for clear air below the cloud base. The valley south looked open. Visibility ahead was 5 or 6 miles. To the north it was already a solid gray wall with no depth to it. Then he saw the lighter patch. To the southwest, maybe 10 miles out, the overcast appearing to thin, pale gray going almost white, light seemingly coming through. There's a break, he said, turning toward it. Dad? Claire's voice was level. She was looking at the navigation screen on the GPS, specifically at the color overlay that painted the terrain ahead in yellows and reds. The valley floor down there has snowpack. That's light reflecting up through the clouds from below. It's not actually thinning, it just looks that way from the outside. If you fly into that, there's nothing to see and the ground is rising on 3 sides. Walt looked at the pale area in the clouds. He had 21 years in this airplane. I know what a false horizon looks like, he said. You're guessing this isn't one. From the back seat, Diane put her hand on his shoulder. Walt, you've flown in worse than this. You've always gotten us home. She meant it to help. Walt took it. I've got the valley, he said. I know where the high ground is. Visibility drops below 3 miles. I turn around and we go to Missoula. I'm not going to do anything stupid. Claire said nothing. She turned back to the window, and Walt recognized the silence. The one she'd been using on him for 4 years. Not angry, just finished. He pushed the nose down slightly, hunting for clear air below the cloud base. The cloud took them at 7,600 feet. It happened between one breath and the next. The ground disappeared, a line of cottonwoods along a creek, a pale gravel road, and then there was nothing in every direction. Not threatening, not dramatic, just a flat total grayness that pressed against every window like something that had been waiting for them. Diane made a sound she probably didn't mean to make. I've got it, Walt said. He checked the instrument that told him which way was up. The small symbolic airplane in the center of the panel that stayed level even when you couldn't see the real horizon. Wings level. He checked the altimeter. 7,500 feet. He checked his heading. 240. He told himself he could hold this. Hold altitude, hold heading, don't pull back. He had read enough about what happened to pilots who flew into clouds without the right training. They panicked, they pulled back, they lost track of which way was up and flew themselves into the ground. He was not going to do any of that. He was going to watch the instruments and fly the numbers. The GPS showed 39 miles to Spokane. That number felt manageable. What it didn't show him was what was between here and there. A separate screen on the panel, the one that painted the terrain ahead in colors, had been trying to tell him something for the last 4 minutes. Yellow meant rising ground ahead. Red meant it was rising fast. The screen had moved from yellow to red right about the time the clouds swallowed them. Walt had been watching the distance to Spokane. He had not been watching the colors. The problem was his mental map. He was certain he was in a valley that ran west, a valley he had flown 4 years ago in clear daylight. That valley existed, but it curved south about 2 miles before where he had turned. He had turned too soon. He was in a different valley, a shorter one, and this one didn't run west. It ended at a wall of rock that topped out at 9,100 feet above sea level. Walt was at 7,400 feet and still descending. He had 1,700 feet of air between him and the top of that ridge. He did not know it yet. Claire did. She looked at the terrain screen. She looked at the altimeter. She did the math. She looked back at her sister. Diane had her eyes closed, hands flat on her thighs, lips moving slightly. Dad, Claire said, you need to pull up and turn right. Right now. I see the terrain screen. Then you see the ridge. It tops out at 9,100 feet. You're at 7,300 and still going down. She kept her voice even. No panic in it, which under the circumstances was the most frightening thing about it. You flew into the clouds, without a rating for it. You're over rising terrain with no way to see it. I have the training for this. I finished my instrument rating in 2021. That means I'm certified to fly in exactly these conditions. I've done it. I know this specific aircraft. Let me have the controls. Claire, 3 minutes to that ridge. She said it the way you say something when the arguing is already over. I need your hands off the controls. From the back, Walt, just his name. Diane's voice very small. Walt looked at the instrument panel. He looked at his hands. He had put those hands on a control yoke for 21 years. And he had never once taken them off because someone told him to. He took them off. He put them in his lap. Claire reached forward and took the controls. She keyed the radio without hesitating. Missoula approached Cessna 724 Kilo Whiskey. Pilot flew into clouds without instrument rating. Request immediate. Clearance to fly instruments. GPS approach runway 228. In the back seat, Diane opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling of the plane. She understood none of the words. She understood everything about the situation. Static. Then, a controller's voice. Flat, practiced, carrying the specific calm of someone whose entire job is to not make things worse. Cessna 4 Kilo Whiskey, Missoula approach. We have you on radar. Set your transponder to 4321. Tell me your altitude and how many people are on board. 7,200 feet and going down. 3 people on board. 4 Kilo Whiskey, climb to 9,000 feet. Turn right to heading 310. We'll bring you around for the approach into Missoula. Set your altimeter to 29902. Climb 9,000 right 310, altimeter 29902. 4 Kilo Whiskey. She raised the nose. Walt watched the altimeter begin climbing. 7,800, 8,200. She trimmed the aircraft for the climb and tracked the heading with small corrections. Not fighting the airplane, reading it. The way you flew when it had stopped being a procedure and become something you just did. She had the second navigation screen already showing the approach into Missoula. Frequencies already set. She had set up for this approach before she said a single word to him. She had been ready before the clouds took them. Walt thought about Saturday mornings at Felts Field when she was 14. Small hands on the controls, quick to feel what the airplane was doing. He'd told her once she'd be a better pilot than him. She'd laughed and said that wasn't hard. Those had been the best mornings he could remember with her. Before her mother got sick, before the disease took everything, and left Walt with nothing to give, so he gave nothing. And told himself that was grief and not cowardice. The controller's voice came back with the final approach clearance. Technical language that meant, you're lined up, you're clear to descend, the runway is ahead of you. Claire read it back in the same flat cadence, each piece exact. Then she paused. She was looking at the autopilot, a gray control box Walt had installed 3 years ago, a row of small buttons and a display screen. I need to ask you something, she said. The words came out differently than everything else she'd said, less certain. Go ahead. This autopilot, when it locks onto the approach path coming down, does it automatically stop controlling the vertical speed, or do you have to switch it manually? Walt looked at the unit. Manually. If you leave it, it fights the descent. You press Alt, then Arm, in that order. Every time? Every time. Software quirk they never fixed. She nodded once, pressed the buttons in the sequence he described, watched the display confirm, went back to flying. 12 seconds. A simple question about a piece of equipment. But Walt sat with it. The fact that she had asked. 4 years of silence. 4 years of closed doors. And here was his daughter asking him something because she needed to know, and he was the only one who could tell her. She had not wanted to ask. He could hear that. She'd asked anyway. He didn't know why that landed the way it did. 15 miles from the airport, the clouds began to thin. Real thinning this time. The gray going lighter, the texture breaking apart in layers. At 1,200 feet above the valley floor, the bottom of the overcast came apart at the edges, and below it, the Clark Fork Valley appeared in the low evening light. The river dark through the trees, the highway running parallel. The airport beacon turning green and white in the distance. Claire raised her eyes from the instruments for the first time since she'd taken the controls. She found the runway, 2 lines of white lights running back from the near end. She flew the center line down to the numbers, crossed the threshold at the right speed, held the nose up through the landing, and put the wheels down with a single clean chirp of rubber. Not someone running through a checklist. Someone for whom this had become automatic, built in real clouds in real conditions, built without him. She rolled to the end and turned off the runway. Clear, she said into the radio. Then she just sat, engine running, hands still on the controls. Outside, the lights of the terminal building were coming on, a fuel truck moving between hangars, the October dark settling over the airport. That was a good landing, Walt said, the same words he'd used every Saturday morning at Felts Field. They came out the same way, a little late, a little stiff. Claire didn't answer. She taxied to the parking area, set the brake, and ran through the shutdown sequence. Walt watched her hands move across the panel. The same sequence he had taught her when she was 14 years old, now so deep in her it needed no thought. The engine stopped. The propeller wound down and stopped. Diane was first out. She climbed down from the wing and stood on the ramp and put both hands on her knees and stayed there for a moment, like someone who had just been returned to the ground and wasn't entirely sure it would hold. Her hair had come half out of whatever she'd put it in. She was shaking. Not dramatically, just the low, persistent tremor of a body that had been holding very still for a very long time, and was now releasing it all at once. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, breathing. Walt came around from the left side and stood by the nose. Claire came around from the right with her bag. She looked at Diane, then at Walt. If she hadn't done that, Diane said to the ground. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Walt looked at his daughter. I know, he said. She did. Claire had her phone out and was searching for flights. She didn't look up, but something in how she held herself shifted slightly. A small release, like a word that had been waiting to be said had finally been said. There's an evening departure from here to Seattle, she said. Connects to Sacramento. Gets me there by midnight. She booked it while they watched, standing on the ramp in the cold. Good, Walt said. She nodded and put the phone in her pocket. The three of them stood there. A small plane on the far end of the field was running its engine in slow rhythmic bursts before heading out into the dark. I've been flying 21 years, Walt said. I've never had anyone take the controls from me. Claire looked at him. I'm glad you did, he said. I want you to know that. She held his gaze for a moment. You let me, she said. That's not nothing. No, he said. I don't think it is. Diane had straightened up. She was watching them the way she always watched them, looking for the place to step in and smooth things over. For once she seemed to understand there was nothing to smooth. The ramp was quiet. The wind had dropped. Walt looked at his daughter standing in the cold with her bag on her shoulder, already pointed toward the terminal, already calculating the connection, the next step. She had always been like that, already 3 problems ahead, even as a little girl. Something occurred to him. He had been looking at it without seeing it for hours. Sacramento, he said. Tuesday morning, early. Her thumb stopped moving on her phone. You took an unplanned seat on a small plane with your estranged father to get there, he said. You were looking at rental cars before Diane had even said yes. You said important meeting and then you didn't mention it again. He paused. What's the meeting, Claire? She didn't answer. Claire, she looked up. And for just a second, before she could put it back, he saw it. A look he recognized from when she was very small, when she was frightened and working very hard not to show it. The ramp seemed to get quieter. I found a lump in August, she said. He didn't move. I had a biopsy in September. They confirmed it 3 weeks ago. She held her phone in both hands, not looking at it. Tomorrow is my first treatment. The program I'm in has a strict schedule. If I miss the first session, I lose my place. Some of these programs have waiting lists. Her voice was steady and factual. She had been saying these words to herself for weeks, turning them into something she could carry without dropping. So I had to get back. Does Diane know? He said. No. Diane had gone very still behind him. Does anyone know? I was going to tell people after the first treatment. I didn't want it to be a thing before it was a thing. Claire, I didn't want people worrying. She said it with enough edge that he understood it wasn't just about people in general. It was about him specifically. She had been planning to face this alone, partly because alone felt safer than depending on him. Because he had taught her, without ever meaning to, that depending on him in the hard moments produced nothing. He stood on the cold ramp and understood exactly what he had made her. He had made her someone who drove herself to biopsy appointments, and sat alone with results, and scheduled her first cancer treatment around a family funeral without telling a single person. Because in the years after her mother died, she had learned that Walt Gruber was not available for the hard things, and she had simply arranged her life around that fact. In the plane, he said. His voice had gone rough. When you asked me about the autopilot, she looked at him. That's the first time you've asked me for anything in 4 years. Something moved across her face, not quite a smile, not quite grief, probably both at once. I know, she said. I was glad you asked. She looked down at her phone, then back up at him. I noticed, she said quietly. He took a step forward and put his arms around her. She went stiff for a second, the old reflex 4 years of distance. And then she didn't. She leaned into it. Her bag slid off her shoulder and hit the ground. She put her face against his jacket the way she had when she was very small, and the world had been something that frightened her sometimes, and he had been the person she came to. He held on. She let him. Behind them, Diane crossed the ramp. She didn't say anything. She just put her arms around both of them and held on too, and the three of them stood there, in the cold on the dark airport ramp, while the mountains went black against the sky, and the wind came down off them, steady and cold and clean. After a while, Claire stepped back. She bent down and picked up her bag. She looked at her father, then at her sister. "I'll call you," she said, after. "We'll be here," Walt said. She nodded. Then she walked toward the terminal building, her bag over her shoulder, head down, moving fast. Walt watched her go. He thought about a girl of 14 over the Spokane Valley on a Saturday morning, small hands on the controls, learning the feel of the aircraft. He'd told her once she'd be a better pilot than him. She'd laughed. He'd been right without knowing he was right. Some gifts travel further than the person who gave them. He still had time to give her more. He intended to. Thanks for listening. If you want more stories like this, subscribe.